Hello, my name is Satsuki Takahashi. I'm a cultural anthropologist and professor of the Faculty of Sustainability Studies at Hosei University. My research interests include environment, ocean, disasters, and temporality. And for today's mini lecture, I would like to introduce one of my undergraduate courses that I teach for our English program, SCOPE. Hope you enjoy. For today's mini lecture, I am hoping to give you a quick introduction on cultural dimensions of biodiversity, which is the theme that we usually cover on week 11. Biodiversity is the variety of life in the world, or in a particular habitat or ecosystem. This term has become one of the most important concepts in the discussion of environmental issues. Perhaps one of the most popular ways in which you hear the term is when some scientists argue that biodiversity is declining because of climate change and other environmental degradations. They also argue that species extinction has become much faster than ever before. As you might have guessed, these discussions of a crisis on biodiversity are often led by natural scientists. Therefore, many of you might think that biodiversity is a research topic only for natural scientists. But we, cultural anthropologists, think that biodiversity is a fascinating topic for us to understand the culture, especially cultures on relationship between human and non-human species. To give an example, when you hear a term like marine biodiversity, what kind of image would you have in your mind? Many of you might imagine a picture like this one. A variety of marine species are coexisting peacefully and calmly. Images of biodiversity such as this one are often understood as an ideal situation of biodiversity. And a message that often comes with such an ideal image of biodiversity is that we humans must protect the biodiversity because all the species, including us, are connected in one way or another. This is an example that tells us about the popular discourses or narratives of biodiversity. We are all connected, from the smallest ant to the tallest tree. Let's protect our family. Conserve biodiversity now. Today, I would like to push you a little bit on these topics, the popular narratives of biodiversity. In other words, I would like you to critically think of what it means when people think of biodiversity and how people actually interact with other species. The examples that I'm going to provide are somewhat against what people often say about biodiversity. And I also want to emphasize that I'm not against the idea of conserving biodiversity. But I do wish us to think critically about what we say and act in terms of conserving biodiversity. Example 1. The war on invasive species. We say all the species are connected, but in real life, there are certain species that we would rather disconnect from. Example 2. The war on the weeds. Weeds is an interesting language. It is fascinating because there is no specific definition of weeds. If you were to define what weeds are, how would you define it? One of my students in the past defined once before that weeds are plants and flowers that are not sold in flower shops. Interesting, isn't it? A wonderfully interesting definition. But if I were to define weeds, I would probably add another characteristic, which is to say that weeds are the plants and the flowers that many humans try to get rid of from their own territories, such as gardens, yards, playgrounds, and streets. Okay, so biodiversity, those examples that I gave, beside these examples, there are other examples such as fire ants and the COVID-19 that allow us to critically think about what the biodiversity means. Biodiversity is an important, interesting, and an important subject because we are in fact all connected. We like it or not. But there are also challenges in terms of how we connect or disconnect with other species. And I would like to emphasize there are no right or wrong answers for these questions of connections and disconnections, but I strongly believe that without our critical thinking and active dialogue, we cannot adequately engage with the challenges of biodiversity or any other social and environmental issues. So today's mini lecture focused on biodiversity, but our class is designed for students to share their thoughts through active discussions. Students in our classes enjoy exchanging opinions with other students, and I also learn a great deal from our discussions. I love learn from our students. So I hope you consider joining us, and I look forward to your future participation. Thank you very much.